Emulation versus the original, the age-old debate between purists and people who value their eyesights. With the prices of retro consoles and games going up in value when we were all homeschooling a couple of years ago, it has gotten out of reach for most, with emulation taking over for not just its value proposition, but also for convenience and better graphics. Do you really want to play Pokemon like this? But purists will stick to the original no matter what, for the sole reason of authenticity. Ah yes, the authentic retro gaming experience. But have you wondered what that actually means? What does authentic mean?
Of undisputed origin and not a copy.
No, in the context of retro gaming, what does it really mean? What most people mean is the use of genuine hardware and software in combination with other accessories such as TVs, controllers, cameras, you name it. If one of these aren't genuine, you could have issues with games not running properly, poor control due to an unofficial controller, and more. Older games were designed with CRT TVs in mind, using the way the CRT operates and the way video signals travel from console to TV. It can produce an image far superior than what you would get from a flat screen TV or even an emulator. But not everyone has the money or space to put a CRT TV in their place. So let's talk something smaller. The Game Boy. This is where the question came about for me. I was in the market for a Game Boy and I had a choice to make. Either pay a premium and get one modded with a laminated IPS screen, or look for an official Nintendo-made backlit Game Boy, also known as AGS 101. I went with the latter because I wanted the authentic experience, which turned into this hot gathering of words and sentences you're watching right now. Because if you think about it, there's so many ways to play GBA games that would be classified as authentic. There's the original Game Boy Advance with a non-lit screen, GBA SP with its hinge mechanism and a front-lit screen, AGS 101 model which replaces the front-lit screen to a backlit screen, Game Boy Player for GameCube which lets you play on television, Game Boy Micro which abandons the backwards compatibility for original Game Boy and Game Boy Color in exchange for a compact design, Nintendo DS which has a GBA slot for backwards compatibility, and DS Lite which slimmed down the design of the original DS. Here's a question. Do you think these are all authentic? Let's use the logic like we did for the consoles. We said CRT TV is a must for an authentic experience. So does that mean the original Game Boy Advance with a non-lit screen is the only authentic hardware? Every other official Nintendo hardware uses either a different panel technology, and in case with Game Boy Player, has no screen at all. Is this a stretch? Games aren't going to look better on a non-lit screen like how console games look better on a CRT, but both games were designed with those individual screen panels in mind. Wait, but all GBA hardwares were made by Nintendo for GBA games. How is that not authentic? Well, Nintendo and many other console manufacturers weren't making televisions. The only reason we say CRT TVs are essential to the authentic experience is because it's the television from that era, games look better on it, and it is the screen the developers intended the games to be played on. You could argue the games look better because the developers targeted for CRTs. Do you know the year the first commercial flat screen TVs came out? It was manufactured by Fujitsu and was released in 1997. The price would be unobtainable by most consumers until the price drop in 2005. However, that doesn't mean people didn't buy them. Surely, people had flat screen TVs before 2005, and a select few likely had them before the year 2000. Which means these flat screen TVs coexisted with consoles we consider to be authentic with CRT TVs only. It's not that CRT is authentic because it was the only screen technology at the time. Sure, it was more readily available, but it wasn't the only kid on the block who could display image on his thick body. This means the intent of developers is what defines authenticity. Which means, in order to find the authentic GBA hardware, we have to talk to every single GBA game developers and ask which model they were targeting for. This logic can be applied to older handhelds like Game Boy and Game Boy Color as well. Speaking of Game Boy Color, did you have one as a kid? Do you remember what the screen looks like? Well, after I bought an AGS 101, I wanted a Game Boy Color as well. So I bought the original, wanting the authentic experience. And look what I got. This is gonna look fine in the video since it's under a very bright light and the screen is directly pointing at the camera, but a slight tilt or decrease in room brightness results in loss of color, and with no light you will see a blank screen. Compare this to AGS 101, it's night and day, and even my AGS 101 doesn't compare to modern screens. I ended up returning this one since the condition was not as promised, but this was definitely a wake-up call for me. Sticking to this authenticity thing has not been pleasant in most cases. It's nothing but cumbersome, but maybe I'm looking at this from the wrong perspective. Maybe people, including myself, don't really know what they mean when they say authentic in the context of gaming. Our definition of authenticity is wrong. It has nothing to do with whether the hardware, software, or other peripherals are genuine or not. Nothing to do with screen technology or the developer's intent. It has everything to do with you. It's your personal experience, bias, and perception that determines whether something is authentic or not. When I was a kid in the mid-2000s, everyone I knew either had a DS Lite or a PSP. All I had back then was a Famiclone and a PS2 Slim, which I had 2 to 3 games for, and had very limited access to. If my parents saw me even near that thing, I'd be in trouble. And being a kid, you want something that other people have, and as far as I knew, I didn't know anyone who had a home console. Everyone had handhelds. I have fond memories from back then, borrowing friends' DS and playing Mario Kart and competing with each other's ghosts. It was a lot of fun. If you ask me now, after all those years, to buy myself the authentic DS setup, I wouldn't hesitate one bit. I'd immediately pick up a white DS Lite and an R4 chip. Now, I'm not condoning piracy, it's just that's what everyone had. To me, from living in that era, R4 chip was part of the DS experience, and dare I say, it is an essential part of it. Same with PSP. Everyone I knew had a modded PSP, and their own pirated animes encoded for PSP. I still remember watching a filler episode of One Piece on my friend's PSP on a field trip. That was the experience back then. That's what shaped me as a gamer, and my version of authentic DS and PSP experience. To me, those are the intended way to play those consoles. I now have the resources to buy genuine copies of DS games, but it feels really awkward and frankly unauthentic. This goes for all of you. If you had a chance to buy a Game Boy that you think is the most authentic, which model would you go for? The original DMG model, Game Boy Pocket, or Game Boy Light? If you have ever owned any of these models and have history with it, you will likely go with the model you had. But if you're like me and have never seen or held an original Game Boy in person, you will likely go with the DMG model because it's the most iconic model and it fulfills our expectation and bias of what Game Boy experience is supposed to be. Big, chunky handheld with no light and an ugly 4 shades of green. Other models are objectively better. Pocket reduces the size and the screen is now in proper black and white. Light introduces a lit screen several years prior to the GBA-SP. But to someone like me who never owned one, but has a visual in his head about what the Game Boy should be, Pocket and Light simply isn't authentic. Authenticity is the history you have had with the console, the perception and expectation you had with it, and the bias you have towards it. Doesn't matter what device you use, whether the software is genuine or pirated, whether you use an emulator, increase resolution, frame rate, or install mods on it. It's the personal connection you make with the game or device that matters. Nobody will take your experience of playing a Game Boy in the backseat of a car on a family trip while you wait for a street light to shine on your Game Boy so you can see the screen. That is authentic. So pick your device, emulators, and games. Have fun. That's it for now. Bye.